Scott Fox after 9. Today's episode, I'm going to try and be sensitive to how people are feeling right now. Yesterday, the budget passed by 2 votes in the House of Commons. The budget is now the law of the land. I have heard from so many of you in the last number of hours since that budget passed, and even a little bit in the lead up to the budget passing. And today, I'm going to tell you some things that I learned last night from I can't say the person's name, but I will tell you that I got a phone call last night. It was around 8 o'clock, and it was from a Calgary area code. I know some people in Calgary, but no one that would just call me out of the blue. On the other line was a fairly prominent member of the Conservative Party of Canada. I'll leave it at that. I'm not going to tell you what this person does or did, but I'm going to tell you that this is someone who I certainly have been following their career politically for a long time, and I respect this person's opinion a lot. And this person's job last night in calling me was to try and inform me a little bit of the behind the scenes, a little bit of the thought process, and a little bit of where we go from here. Again, I know there's a lot of people upset that that budget passed, and there's a lot of people upset that more people aren't upset that the budget passed. And let's be clear, everybody in opposition hates that budget. The NDP voted against it. The Green Party almost voted against it. They voted for it, but they still said they hate the budget. The Conservatives voted against it, and so did the Bloc Québécois. So in this episode, I'm going to give you some stuff that I'm going to call an exclusive for now. I'm sure I'm not the only person who got that phone call last night. I'm sure other conservative media voices did as well, and they might share it on their platforms. But I'm going to tell you in no uncertain terms what happened last night, why the Conservatives were prepared to let the budget pass, and where we go from here. And by the way, you heard me correctly. Even if the NDP voted against the budget, which would have been enough to bring it down, the Conservatives were going to let it pass last night. And I know exactly why. I know the strategy behind it, and I know what's coming next. All of that and more in this episode of After 9. Let's start off, though, with something that got a lot of attention yesterday before the vote even happened. You see, on television yesterday, their whole job, it seems, was to try and convince Canadians that nobody wants an election right now. They were doing the whole dance. Oh, who's going to be the unpopular party who brings down the government and forces Canadians to the polls at Christmas? I don't see it that way. I'll be honest with you. I don't see it that way. See, to me, yesterday was a referendum amongst politicians on a budget that's going to spend a heck of a lot of money, an absolute astounding amount of money. Let me just give you a couple of highlights from what Canada did yesterday. The new budget projects a $78.3 billion deficit for this fiscal year. It adds to the national debt about $80.5 billion. Our new debt is $1.347 trillion. And after this year, it'll be over $2 billion because we have a $78.3 billion deficit. Over $2 trillion in debt by next year. That's how bad it is. We have no capacity to pay that back. In fact, we're spending more on interest payments than we're spending on health care right now because we let the debt get so far out of control under Justin Trudeau, and now Mark Carney is going to double down on it. Now, I'm not going to do sour grapes here. I'm not. The budget passed. The Liberal government was duly elected, I guess. They have the right to put a budget forward. That's what we expect our government to do. It should have been done back in April. We shouldn't have been having this discussion or even been in a scenario where if the opposition brought the budget down yesterday, we would be having a Christmas election. That was all by design. It was all well planned out. There was a reason that the budget came out when it did. And part of it was to discourage opposition parties from bringing it down because, again, you don't want to be the unpopular party who makes Canadians go and vote over Christmas. Well, listen, like I said, I see that a different way. Yesterday was a referendum on a budget that is extremely consequential, and our politicians had a chance to take a stand. They could support it and double down on the plan that Mark Carney has for Canada, or they could oppose it and try and rein in spending and do the responsible thing. Well, parliamentarians decided they're going to get behind Mark Carney's plan, and they're going to let Mark Carney do it his way. Now, part of the reason we've got this budget passed is partially because of the Green Party. Now, the Green Party is, I think, kind of a joke. I think they're laughable. I like the concept of a Green Party. I like having a voice for the environment in Parliament, but the people that are the voice are just complete twits. Let me play for you a little bit of Member of Parliament Elizabeth May, leader of the Green Party. This is her with a very dramatic proclamation that she's going to support the budget after talking to Mark Carney. Listen to this.
I have to say that I've been listening to Canadians really clearly. My friend and colleague in the British Columbia Green Party, who used to be my MLA, Adam Olsen, who's Sartla First Nation, used to say when the BC Greens had the balance of power, he'd say no. It's the balance of responsibility. And I have to say, the weight of that responsibility has been sitting with me for a while. And obviously, the closer the vote got, and I started looking at, it could be 171 to 171. Then depending on abstentions, which you can't measure right now in our Parliament. You can look around the room and see who's there, but then you know they could be voting on their apps somewhere else. I couldn't vote for that budget as I read it. I made it clear why I found it so very deficient. And one of the reasons was the Paris Agreement, and our commitment to it wasn't even mentioned. Our commitments to climate adaptation weren't mentioned. And I felt it weakened where we were on the nature agenda and the Kunming-Montreal Agreement that wasn't mentioned. So, as you could tell, and as I've said for so often that I think I've spoken to all of you individually, I was still talking to the government, talking to people within the Prime Minister's office, talking to various ministers, to see if there was some way to remedy a document in print that I couldn't support. I think we found that way today. I heard overwhelmingly from my constituents and Canadians from coast to coast that they wanted someone to stop an election happening by accident. That's a place of responsibility.
Is it responsible, though? You've got Elizabeth May here trotting out wearing her Order of Canada pin and her World Economic Forum pin. Imagine that. When she did what she did, she was doing it with a World Economic Forum pin on, a brooch, if you will. Elizabeth May is saying, even though she hates the budget, and you just heard her say she hates the budget, doesn't like it, doesn't want to support it, tried everything she could to get it changed to something that she could support, the Prime Minister's office said, no, get out of here. She still voted for it because she didn't want an election. Well, what's more important? Defeating a budget that you know is bad for Canada and bad for the Canadian people, especially the middle class, or making sure they don't have to go and vote in the snow? I mean, to me, that's a no-brainer. We're going to do what's best for Canada. And if it means that we have to have another election, so be it. We have to have another election. That's the will of Parliament. The NDP, the Greens, the Bloc, and the Conservatives all voted against that budget yesterday. But thanks to abstentions and flip-flops here like Elizabeth May, the budget passed. And that's not a good excuse. Hate the budget. Not going to be good for our country. But I don't want to be the one who sends people to the polls. So I'm going to vote in favor of the budget. What a completely ridiculous stance to take.
And I heard my own inner voice say, we're at the very edge of it being too late for us to be sure that our own children and grandchildren alive today can live in a livable world where human civilization is sustainable. Without what I heard from the Prime Minister today, I would have voted no. I didn't like the idea of ducking and abstaining, although that was a possibility. I wasn't afraid of an election for me personally, for the Green Party. But the answer is, I heard a firm commitment to something I hadn't heard before from Mark Carney, Prime Minister, that I'd heard previously from Mark Carney, former Governor of the Bank of Canada, former Governor of the Bank of England, former Special Envoy for Climate Finance to the Secretary General of the United Nations. I heard a firm commitment we will meet our Paris targets. That requires action very soon, because the first target we're going to hit is 2030 and then 2035. Legally binding treaty commitments and a commitment to do far more that we've heard in the budget with funding for the coming Montreal commitments to nature, to stop beating up on Mother Earth and start the process of CPR. So, against what I had expected to say to you today, I'm going to vote yes for the country, for the planet, and for my hope in the future. The Liberals can't.
There should be a mental acuity test to be a member of parliament. If you're going to be creating laws for the rest of us, you should have to prove that you're of sound mind. And frankly, that would contradict that suggestion. Elizabeth May there just coming off completely loopy as she tries to explain why she's pulled a complete about face. And again, let's be clear. Elizabeth May hates this budget, but she likes Mark Carney, his resume anyway. And she says he told her we would meet our Paris climate targets. Well, I don't know that that's even possible anymore, frankly, and I'm really not sure if that's of any interest to this prime minister. He's going to spend a lot of money, particularly on projects involving fossil fuels. So I'm really not sure how we're going to do it. He's got this pie in the sky idea about low carbon gas and oil. Fine. Again, let's wait a few years and see where we're at on that, because I don't know that we're going to get there. Elizabeth May compromised every one of her principles and beliefs. And even though she thinks she's helping the environment, she completely sold it out. You know, I admire a politician who stands by their convictions. And Elizabeth May, like her or not, always stood on the side of the environment. Elizabeth May says this budget is terrible for the environment, but she was looking for a reason to vote for it. And she says, Mark Carney promised me we would hit our Paris Climate Accord targets. Oh, okay. Well, he didn't actually swear it or promise it. He just said he would try. And apparently that's good enough for Elizabeth May. She got absolutely nothing for her vote. And now she has, in the same news conference where she talked about leaving a sustainable world for her grandkids, well, she just sentenced her grandkids to generational debt that will never get paid off in their lifetime. It'll be over $2 trillion and climbing every year under this budget. And Elizabeth May just sold out every young person, including her own grandkids, for what? What did she get? Because I have a feeling it had to be more than that. What else did they give her besides we're going to try to hit our Paris Climate Accord commitments? What else did she get? Come on, don't tell me it was nothing. I'm going to move on from Elizabeth May, but there's a lot of audio out there of her just sounding, like I said, loopy. I mean, she doesn't sound like a serious politician. She came out and said how bad the budget was. Then she voted in favor of it. You know who else did that? The NDP. The NDP is talking out of both sides of their mouth because they had most of their members vote against it, but they saved two. Two of them abstained rather than vote. Now, on something as serious as a confidence vote, I don't know that you should be allowed to abstain. Take a stand. When you ran to be a member of parliament in your area, New Democrat members, did you tell your constituents how wishy-washy you were and how indecisive you are? Probably not. You told them you were going to go and fight for their interests. Well, you sure as hell didn't fight for their interests yesterday. Here is the interim NDP leader, Don Davies.
In the lead up to Budget 2025, New Democrats made it very clear that it needs to address head-on the crises facing Canadian families and invest in the programs that Canadians rely on. We have record unemployment, particularly among young people. We have a housing shortage and a cost of living crisis in communities across the country. Our cherished public health care system needs to be expanded, not cut. We need better childcare.
Just want to point out he's right about all of those things. But if you stop and ask, well, how did it get this bad in Canada? How did all of the things that the interim leader of the NDP just said, how did all of those things happen on our watch? It was because of the NDP propping up Justin Trudeau and letting him have a blank check to do whatever he wanted. That's why we're in the situation we're in, New Democratic Party of Canada members. It's your fault and your former leader, Jagmeet Singh.
Since the budget was presented almost 2 weeks ago, we have taken the time to listen to our constituents and to meet with stakeholders. It is clear from those conversations that this is a budget that does not address the real needs facing Canadians. It fails to meet the moment, deliver transformational change, or address the urgent needs facing Canadians.
Well, hold on a second here. Hold on. Now we've heard from the Green Party and the New Democrats how bad this budget is. I'm wondering, if you're a Liberal, how are you feeling right now? How are you feeling? Because this budget got passed 170 to 168. That was with 4 abstentions. There were 2 Conservative abstentions and there were 2 New Democrat abstentions. And the Conservative ones are something I'm going to talk about right after I get done with Don Davies here. I'll explain to you that call I got last night from Calgary and exactly what's going on behind the scenes. That's an exclusive for now. Maybe, I don't know. Like I said earlier, they probably told all of the Conservative media voices what the strategy is. I'm sure I'm not the only one who got that call, but I'll tell you about the call that I got last night. Here's a little more of Don Davies.
While there are elements of the budget which reflect our concerns, on the whole, this is a Conservative budget. From reducing healthcare funding to provinces, to making deeper cuts to services than Stephen Harper's budgets did, including to programs that are helping Canada's most marginalized communities, to reversing action on the climate crisis, this budget fails to deliver the policies our country needs. It particularly fails Indigenous people. But through these discussions, it became equally clear that Canadians do not want an election right now. The consequences of defeating this budget would not be to improve it or to help Canadians. It would be to plunge the country into an election only months after the last one, and while we still face an existential threat from the Trump administration.
Let me just reiterate here. Voting against the budget should be a principled position. If you truly don't agree with the budget, you shouldn't vote for the budget. Coming out and saying you don't agree with the budget, but you're going to vote for it anyway, just so Canadians don't have to vote, is a special level of, well, you can insert your own adjective there, can't you? What is that? Is that incompetence? Is it just a complete and total lack of integrity? Is it a failure to be able to read the room? Is it political opportunism? Is it a fundamental lack of understanding of how our parliamentary system works? And by the way, that is how our system works. Democracy must be in play at all times. Canada gave Mark Carney a minority government. It was on Mark Carney to put out a budget that the opposition could get behind. Well, last night they didn't. This is the opposition, the ones who hold the balance of power, the New Democrats and the Greens, saying it's a terrible budget. You've heard it numerous times in the last 18 minutes. Numerous times. How bad this budget is and why. That's coming from folks on the left. Now, they're suggesting this is a conservative budget. No, it is not. Well, maybe it is. I guess it depends on how you consider conservatism. I don't see the Conservatives at this point in our history going out and spending the kind of money that Mark Carney is going to be spending in this budget. Again, you've got Liberals and New Democrats openly admitting they hate the budget. They only voted for it or supported it because they say we don't want an election right now. Well, the will of the people must be the will of the people. And if the opposition doesn't like the budget, that's a failure of government to make it palatable for the opposition. So that means we need to have an election. That's how our parliamentary system works. And this is an interim leader of a political party in Canada. Doesn't seem to understand what that is, or he doesn't care about democracy. I think the NDP is done after the next election. I don't think we're going to be dealing with them federally for a very long time. I think that they're probably just going to fade into oblivion. Their members aren't principled. They allowed Justin Trudeau to ruin our country for 10 years, and it appears they're going to allow Mark Carney to do it for God knows how much longer. All because they want to save their jobs and they want to save their pensions. That's the only way you can see this. There's no other way. They said they hate it and they still supported it. But of course, they didn't vote for it. They had most of their members vote against it, and then they got 2 of them to abstain. There was a scenario where there could have been a tie. And if there's a tie, the Speaker of the House breaks the tie. Well, the Speaker of the House is a Liberal. Everybody knew that. But what about the Conservative Party? That's an interesting one, because I'll tell you straight up right now, based on a long conversation that I had last night, Pierre Poilievre was not going to let that budget fall last night. There were Conservative members that were ready to jump in and abstain if they had to make sure that budget didn't fall. This is what I'm being told by a fairly senior member of the Conservative Party of Canada. Pierre Poilievre wasn't going to let that budget fall last night. And I don't know what that says about Pierre. You can form your own opinion on that, but they were not going to do it. Let me tell you why. Here's the strategy, everybody. Before I get to Ontario Premier Doug Ford, here's the strategy. The Conservatives made a decision that Andrew Scheer and one other member were basically going to be the outliers. They were not going to be in the House for the vote. They were going to be just out in the hall on the voting app that members of Parliament have access to. On the app, you can see how other people voted and you get a tally. And the reason that was important was if the NDP had all voted against the budget, 2 Conservative members would have had to have abstained to make sure that the budget still passed. Pierre Poilievre is not interested in an election right now. A lot of Conservatives are interested in an election, but Pierre was not going to have it yesterday. And again, here's why. Because he might not win. The way things look right now, the Conservatives and the Liberals go back and forth over who's got a lead. If there were an election held right now, and anything could happen during an election, but you have to go off of the info that you've got in front of you. Mark Carney still has somewhat higher polling numbers, personally. Actually, I shouldn't even say somewhat. It's he's got really good polling numbers. 52% say they approve of Mark Carney. I still maintain that polls are a lagging indicator, and I think they're manipulated on some level to try and influence people and politicians to do decisions that the pollsters want done. So there's that. That's just my opinion, though. I have nothing to back that up on. I just find a lot of these polls that I see very hard to believe. Pierre Poilievre is trailing Mark Carney as preferred prime minister. The parties themselves go neck and neck. Winter election, very hard to anticipate who's going to come out and vote. You have to identify who your supporters are and ask yourself if they're going to come out and vote. Now, for a while there was a lot of reason to think the boomers would probably sit this one out. They probably wouldn't vote in the numbers they typically vote in. And if that's the case, that could create a lane for the Conservatives to win. But does Pierre really want to go through another election 8 months after our last election, only to end up with another Liberal minority or to end up with a Conservative minority? Not much would change there. And the Conservative agenda would not get through because the Liberals would obstruct it just as much as the Conservatives obstruct the Liberals. That's what the opposition does. And when the Liberals are in opposition, they'll have every right to do it. So Pierre made a decision, or party leaders made a decision, that they were not going to let that budget fall yesterday. They're going to wait. Because something that I pointed out just a few weeks ago apparently resonated pretty well in Ottawa, even made the caucus meeting. The Liberals are not going to get any more popular than they are right now. They've hit their peak. There's only one way to go, down. When you look at all of the economic indicators, this budget is not going to build anything quickly. It's not like in a few months you're going to be able to look around and see shovels in the ground and think, oh, wow, Canada's recovery has begun. It's going to take a very, very, very long time before anything that we're going to build is actually built. It's going to take a long time before you even see it getting built. The Liberals are not going to get any more popular because the economy is going to get really bad. Really, really, really bad. In fact, now I'm hearing they might have to raise interest rates next year. That's right, raise them again. The inflation numbers came out just the other day. 2.2%. The Liberals are going to try and claim that that's a victory. Inflation's down. No, it's not. It's up 2.2%. It's not up as much as it was in September, but it's still a 2.2% increase. And that's on top of last year's increase. And that's on top of the previous October's increase. Inflation is up. The cost of living is bad. And people are looking at a pretty bleak looking Christmas here. A lot of families that aren't even paying their bills because they need money for food or to try and do something to create some normalcy for their kids at Christmas. We're about to go through a really bad one. Retailers are going to hurt. A lot of people are losing their job. Investment is fleeing Canada at an absolutely astonishing rate. Now, you might not know that if you just watch the mainstream media news because they don't talk about that. But it's real. It's reality. Do a couple of searches and you'll find it on your own. The economy is bad right now and it's going to get a lot worse very, very quickly. The Liberals have to wear that. And now the New Democrats have to wear it, and so do the Greens. And on some level, so do the Conservatives. If the NDP hadn't allowed that budget to pass, the Conservatives would have. But here's the strategy. Let the economy get bad. Let Mark Carney have his way. He's going to have this budget go through. He's going to spend us into generational debt. Nothing is going to get built anytime soon. We aren't going to be our own best customer for many, many, many years. And it's going to take a long time to see any return on investment from what the money that is being spent now is intended to do. Things are going to get bad. People are going to turn on their government. We know that because the RCMP already briefed the government that Canadians, when they realize how broke we are, might even revolt. It's about to get bad. And now it is 100%, now maybe 95% on the Liberals. They're going to wear it. And if you look down the line at what's coming, there's going to be many confidence votes. Many, many, many of them. There'll be another budget. I assume we're going to get back on track and go to April budgeting. It doesn't make sense to have a budget come out halfway through the budget year. So we have to get back on track with the spring budget. Hopefully they do that. That'll be a confidence vote. There's going to be a number of them coming up. There's going to be lots of opportunities to bring down the government. But when the Conservatives looked at the lay of the land, they looked at the current polling, they looked at the state of the party, they looked at the opportunities coming up, it didn't make sense to bring the Liberals down yesterday. So no matter what, all that hype, all the TV coverage, all the talking heads and pundits on TV, it was all a show. That budget was always going to pass yesterday. All the talk, all the bluster, all the I hate it, it was going to pass no matter what. Pierre was going to let it pass. And that's only because if we have an election, not much is going to change. Would you want, if you're a conservative, you're probably a little disappointed today because it didn't go your way yesterday. The Liberals got their way. Their budget is going to go through and they're going to hope for the best. As a conservative, you're probably disappointed that that happened because I assume you've looked into it and you understand what that much debt is going to do to Canada. You understand that it's not sustainable to be spending more on interest payments on our debt than we do on health care. We have real needs for the middle class in this country, and frankly, they aren't being met. You heard the NDP and the Greens say that. You got to hold your nose and let it go through. Because if we had an election, the result may be exactly the same. It might flip to a conservative minority government. The odds of a conservative majority were slim. So if there's any comfort you can take in the Conservatives not bringing down the government yesterday or not trying to bring down the government, it's that it might not have changed anything anyway. Their better chance is to form a majority government once the economy gets worse than it is right now. And it's going to get a lot worse. That's what I'm told from someone whose opinion I respect, from someone I like a lot. I have no idea how they got my phone number, and they did not say who gave it to them. But that's what I was told last night, is that triggering an election over that budget was not going to change much. The best opportunity to save Canada is with a Conservative government, and the best way to do it is with a majority, and they're far more likely to get a majority in the late winter or early spring than they were to get one in December. Let's keep in mind here, again, if you're a Conservative, I get it. You're upset. You're angry. The mistake got made back in April. This was just an opportunity to right a wrong and to put us back on the right track. You gave Carney 8 months. He said all the things he was going to do, and he didn't do any of them. We still don't have a deal with the Americans. Things are looking pretty bad. Our economy is sliding down a hill very, very quickly. That was just the first opportunity to fix it. There's going to be a lot more opportunities, and I think you got to calm down. I'm looking at some real heated Conservatives, and some of them are saying, well, this is going to be what pushes Alberta out of Canada. I don't think it will. I think that's a lot of hyperbole, and I think you need to calm down. Personally, this is a Conservative telling you, calm down. No, it didn't go your way yesterday. Yes, this budget is terrible. It's going to do horrible things for our economy. It does nothing for the middle class. Refer back to the comments that the NDP and the Greens made. I don't like it either for a lot of the same reasons. Does nothing for the environment either. But nothing would change if that budget was defeated yesterday. They wouldn't spend all the money, but they might get back in with a majority. And then what do you do to stop that? You bet that if we had an election coming up, Mark Carney and his buddy Donald Trump would cook something up to make it seem like Mark Carney's the savior. He might even have gotten a majority. And nobody wants that. There's a lot of liberals who don't even want that. So let's keep it in perspective. It's not the end of the world. The budget is bad. It's going to be horrible for our kids and our grandkids and their grandkids. We know that. The money is spent. As soon as that budget got passed, they probably started printing checks that they've been dying to send out. A lot of our money is going to get wasted. Taxes are going to have to go up. There's no other way to do this, but our taxes are going to have to go up. And if it's not an income tax increase, it'll be an HST increase or something. Excise taxes are going to go up. Import taxes are going to go up. All of them. They have to because there's far more money going out than coming in. And the money that is coming in is to cover interest. It's not even for the betterment of the people. This was a bad budget. But if the alternative is you might be handing Mark Carney a majority government. If the alternative is we're going to end up in the exact same spot and the exact same budget is going to come up again, it's just we spent $50 million on an election that we didn't need, then we're all going to feel pretty stupid. Yes, I think people would like to vote. I would have been fine to vote. But if it's not going to change anything and there's a better opportunity for maybe a Conservative majority coming in the spring, we just have to let Canadians suffer a little bit more, then I guess that's what's going to have to happen. Canadians made that choice. But again, they made it back in April. What happened yesterday was a chance to fix it, but it's not the only chance. There's a lot more chances coming. And that is the message from the Conservative Party of Canada. Chill. It's not the end of the world. We know what we're doing. Wait for the spring. Then we're going to see some action because everybody is banking on the fact that the economy is tanking. It's not looking good here, guys. Everything that Mark Carney is promising, even if everything he promised in that budget actually comes true, it won't be for years. We're not going to see the benefit of it for years. The middle class could have used something now, and they're going to continue suffering. Lineups at food banks are going to continue. A lot of families are going to have that uncomfortable conversation with their kids. Sorry, it's going to be a real light Christmas this year. But that's what Canadians chose. Now they're just going to have to suffer through it a little bit longer. And it sucks to say that. Nobody should suffer. But again, this is what Canada chose. They selected a liberal minority government that survived a confidence vote. Their budget's going to go through. But if you really want this government gone, stay on it. Wait for the spring, maybe even late winter. There's a scenario where I see a couple of confidence votes coming up in February that should be very interesting. I'm going to move on from this. I hope that was somewhat comforting. I hope you learned a little bit there about what the strategy was. And I'm very happy that they told me what the strategy was. Good. And they're right. And they're basing all of that off of something I said a few weeks ago. The Liberals are never going to get more popular than they are right now. It's all downhill from here as long as the economy keeps trending in the direction it's going. So be patient, wait it out. You'll get your chance in a few months. Now let's move on. Yesterday, Ontario Premier Doug Ford He was out speaking to the media at Queen's Park in Toronto. Let's hear a little bit of what the Premier had to say.
It was good to get together. I recommended we do it more often. We do it frequently, making sure we're all speaking off the same song sheet. And we're gonna have a discussion more frequently than it's been a little while. But I want to thank the Prime Minister for traveling around the world and getting Canada out front and making sure that we diversify our trade with other countries. So it was a good, positive meeting.
Premier Doug Ford continuing to toe the line for Prime Minister Mark Carney. They're friends. I think everybody knows and understands that now. They are friends. I don't know where the Premier is coming from on that one, saying that the Prime Minister is out traveling and diversifying our trade, because so far there's no indication that that's actually happening. I haven't seen any big trade deals announced. I haven't heard anything to say we're replacing all the business we did with America with countries X, Y, and Z. Nothing like that. It's a junket that he's out on. It's a freebie for the media. They're touring around, they're shaking hands, maybe building some relationships, but there's no real deals getting done here that the public are aware of anyway. If they've got something cooking in the background, I guess I'm interested in hearing it, but the big prize is resolving the situation with the Americans, which is something that none of these premiers and the Prime Minister do not want to do right now. They need you angry at Donald Trump.
Can you give you any updates on the talks with the U.S.? Essentially, there's no communication right now, in any sense that that's going to...
Yeah, I think behind the scenes there's always communication. Both teams are working hard to come up with a deal. They want to go sector by sector. That's fine. I don't disagree with that. But the key ones here are obviously the auto sector, steel sector, and softwood lumber manufacturing of all types. And I just feel that we're going to have to focus on what we can do, what Canada can do, what Ontario can do to create the environment and the conditions to attract companies to come here and invest. And our number one selling feature, we have many, but our talent. We have the most talented people anywhere in the world, no matter if it's our energy, our nuclear sector, or manufacturing sector, tech sector, AI sector, and the list keeps going on. But that's what we need to do, is make sure that we create an environment, again, with lower taxes, less red tape, less regulations to attract companies.
Do companies want to come here when they find out what the situation is here? I mean, Doug says we've got the talent. That doesn't add up, because the Prime Minister just announced he's spending $1.7 billion to attract 1,000 of the geniuses that are on H-1B visas in America. So I don't know, do we have the talent, or do we need to attract the talent and spend almost $2 billion doing it? Hard to say. Do companies really want to come here when they know the cost of labor, and they know that there's record lineups at food banks, and they know that our economy is shedding billions and billions and billions of dollars in investment regularly? Like, why would they come here? Ask yourself that. The Premier is saying everything right. That's what you have to say if you're hoping businesses will invest here. But I think the Canadian people deserve a little bit of honesty. How many people are lined up to invest in Ontario or Canada right now, knowing the situation on the ground? Did the budget help? And if it did, how much did we promise them? Because they're not coming for nothing. And the alternative is go to America, go to Europe, go to Asia, whatever. I'm curious, what makes here the center of the universe? Personally, I don't see it, but I'm open to hearing the argument.
Do you any indication, Premier, whether he thought the budget would pass? And do you hope the budget passes this afternoon or this evening?
Well, I hope so. I hope the budget passes. He didn't mention if he thought it was passing or not, but I'm pretty confident it's in the best interest of the country to make sure we pass this budget. We work together. It doesn't matter what political stripe you're from. We need to work as Team Canada right now, and that's exactly what we're doing.
Do you still disagree about reciprocal tariffs? Do you and him still oppose or have to vote?
I do. I think especially in our steel sector. I know the Prime Minister will be meeting with the CEOs, I believe tomorrow, the steel sector. A couple things. We have to make sure that the threshold rate now on tariffs in the steel sector was 60%, and the quota now has been dropped to 50%. I'm going to simplify this. Most steel manufacturing countries around the world, their domestic use is 65 to 85%, meaning they use their own steel. Here in Canada, It's 35%. That's unacceptable. We need to drop the quota down to 25%. So anything over and on top of 25%, these countries get tariffed. I won't name the countries, but there's many of them. They slap a made in whatever country sticker on their steel, ship it over. We know it's cheap Chinese steel with the made in whatever Pakistan sticker on it, because they're one of the countries, and they dump cheap steel here in Ontario that hurts our steel industry. So that's one of many, a quick fix for our steel sector that we'd be looking for.
So how many billions of dollars are we going to give to steel companies? Because to be perfectly honest with you, I'm getting a little tired of hearing about all these sectors that are complaining about the tariffs. I mean, the Prime Minister continuously says we have the best deal with America. 85% of the goods are tariff-free. But then I hear nonstop about softwood lumber, steel, aluminum, blah, blah, blah. Didn't we just create a Buy Canadian provision? So if these companies are suffering because they had been exporting all of their steel to America, likely doing it because we have a 70-cent dollar right now, and it's very advantageous for the Americans to buy Canadian steel. Meanwhile, we've got China, apparently via Pakistan, if I heard the Premier correctly, dumping cheap steel in Canada. How can Chinese steel via Pakistan end up in Ontario and be cheaper than Ontario steel? Because you bet your ass, if the Ontario steel was cheaper, we'd be using that. Well, now we're in a situation where everything we build will need to use Canadian steel and aluminum. Isn't that more than enough to make up for what they're losing in tariff business? Because I have to think as we rebuild the whole nation, that's going to be enough. We're building rail corridors that transcend multiple provinces. Apparently, we're going to build a pipeline. All of these things involve steel and aluminum. And frankly, I don't know that they need handouts from the taxpayers right now. I'd like to know a lot before we give a penny to these steel and aluminum makers, because we're giving them a massive captive audience here. We're rebuilding the country and we're only going to use their product. Why would we need to subsidize them on top of that? That doesn't make sense.
Did the Prime Minister talk at all about how he would like the provinces to be involved or not involved in the negotiations with the United States?
Well, he specifically said that we should be out there speaking. One comment was about speaking to China, and he encouraged it. And we work collaboratively with the federal government, no matter where we go around the world, and make sure that we, again, sing off the same song sheet as Team Canada. And that's what we're going to focus on.
Did he tell the premiers at all not to run any more commercials, as an example, or
no.
In any way to invest this?
No, he didn't say anything along those lines. We just look forward to continuing to work with the federal government, getting our message out around the world. I want to thank Vic Fideli. I still don't know how he does it, my Minister of Economic Development. He's on a plane all over the world every day. It's absolutely exhausting. But every day he brings back new opportunities. I met with him this morning. He had 4 pages of multi-billion-dollar investments that want to invest in Ontario and in the people of Ontario, because we've created the climate for companies to come here by reducing the cost of doing business here by $12 billion each and every single year. But we have to again get rid of the duplication from the federal government, no matter if it's the Ring of Fire. It's one window, one project, one decision, and I think he's heard that message, not just from me, but other premiers across our province.
Okay, well, what are we worried about then? What are we worried about? Everything's going to be fine. Doug says that Vic Fideli just showed him 4 pages of companies that want to make multi-billion-dollar investments in Ontario. Case closed, right? What are we talking about here? 4 pages of companies. What are we talking, 25 per page? That's $100 billion minimum if they want to do multi-billion-dollar investments. It's at least $100 billion. That solves the deficit right there. Doug, sign them up. Give them the land. Let them build. Or, and hear me out here, maybe that's a gross exaggeration. Again, ask yourself, if you were a business person, You had money to invest in opening a business, and you look at all the different factors, the quality of living for your employees. You look at the cost of real estate. You look at the tax situation. You look at potential to expand. You look at governance and government relations. You look at all the different factors. You mean to tell me that you've got 4 pages of multi-billion-dollar investments? When are they opening? And would you open here? Would you? I'm not saying don't. I'm just saying that I don't know that it's that easy a decision. I don't know why the premier won't tell us who these businesses are then. You say you've got 4 pages. I'm sure 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 10 of those businesses should have no problem then with the premier saying, hey, this company is considering a multi-billion-dollar investment in Canada. Who are these companies? When are they investing? When are they opening? When is the grand opening? I'll go and cheer them on and celebrate. When's the grand opening? Or, again, maybe they're not being as upfront with us as they say they are.
Premier, did the Prime Minister give you any indication that he's willing to back off on the 100% EV tariffs from China? Because that's what they've been asking in order to, drop their tariffs in canola.
Well, we can never drop those tariffs on EV sector. We can't afford to have cheap EV vehicles shipped in from China, undermining our auto sector. And so 100%. I understand where my friends, both two good friends, Zwab Canoe and our champion, as we call him, Scott Moe, because they won the Grey Cup last night. So congratulations, Scott. But I understand that's their issue. They're protecting what's the best interests of Saskatchewan and Manitoba. I'm protecting what's in the best interest of Ontario.
I just want to point out, and I have many times before on the podcast, that Doug Ford is Donald Trump. What did Donald Trump do? He got sick and tired of other countries flooding his markets, taking away business from his businesses, and he decided to impose tariffs to try and right that wrong and even it out. What is Doug Ford doing? Calling for a 100% tariff to continue on Chinese-made electric vehicles to protect the Ontario auto sector. You either do or you don't agree with tariffs. You either do or you don't. Doug was the guy behind the Ronald Reagan ad saying that tariffs are a bad idea, yet he just said it, doubling down on tariffs against China to protect this market. It's the exact same thing as Trump does. Don't you see that? He criticizes Trump and then does the exact same thing, verbatim. You got to see that, right? Like, tell me I'm not crazy. Am I wrong here? Or is he doing exactly what he criticizes Trump for doing?
It's working. We saw the jobs numbers last month. 65,000 new jobs were created across the country. 55,000 were here in Ontario. And keep in mind, folks, by all means, I'm not out here to say, hey, we got 55,000. No. I call it the roller coaster. You're up. We were up last month really well. You go down, you're up, you're down. It's the uncertainty that we're facing, and that's why we have to make sure that we focus on everything we can do to attract these companies to invest. And we have a tremendous amount of announcements come out. If there's one thing that we could do better is go out there and tell people, give them hope. There are jobs being created every single day here in Ontario, and that's what we need to do better. We need to get our message out there because, again, my minister, Vic Fideli, he shows me just pages and pages. My comment back to Vic, let's get that message out there. But we also have to be cautious that we're in uncertain times right now, and affordability, people are feeling the pinch. So it's a happy balance between going out there and saying, yes, here's hope, we're getting more jobs, but never lose track that there's affordability issues right now. I'm glad I mentioned to the federal government, he did the GST on first home.
Okay, so again, he doubles down on pages and pages and pages of companies that want to do multi-billion-dollar investments. We got to start telling people about this. I agree with you. Wholeheartedly. Start telling us, who are these companies? And by the way, people who are struggling are not going to blame you for talking about the companies that want to invest. We just want to know that it's real. And I'll give you an example of why. The premier there talking about the 55,000 new jobs that were created in Ontario last month. I don't believe it. I don't believe it for a second. I don't believe it. I do not believe 55,000 new jobs, good jobs, well-paying jobs were created in Ontario last month. I don't believe it. I think StatsCan is doing everything they can to protect their funding. I do not believe it. Show me where. Show me numbers. Show me 55,000 help wanted ads. Where were those? Where are these 55,000 new jobs, and were they available to regular Canadians? Because I know a hell of a lot of people that have lost their job and are looking for a job right now, and they would disagree with that too. Everybody that hears that thinks that doesn't pass the smell test for me. And it doesn't. Where are these 55,000 new jobs in 1 month that got created? Where are they? Doug is right. It is a roller coaster. Some months are better than others, but I just don't believe that. He keeps talking about these multi-billion-dollar investor companies that want to set up here in Ontario. Where are they? What are their names? Who are they? Where are they going to go? How many people are they going to employ? What did you offer them to come here? How much taxpayer money is going to get spent on corporate welfare to try and attract these people? And what guarantees did you get for jobs and that they're going to stay here for enough time, create enough jobs and enough investment that we're going to recoup the taxpayer money that we spent to bring them here in the first place? That's what I want to hear from Doug Ford. And he won't do that. He will not do that. All of this is just platitudes. It is smoke and mirrors. I'm very happy to hear the premier acknowledge there's a lot of people feeling the pinch. He's damn right about that. A lot of people are feeling the pinch. But then this is Doug Ford, who at the beginning of this news conference talked about how he supports the budget and he hopes it passes. Does he know there's nothing in that budget for the middle class? Nothing at all. Nothing in that budget. And the Green Party and the NDP agree with me. Nothing in that budget for the middle class. I guess it's not entirely surprising. Doug's not exactly great with money either. Ontario's projected deficit for this fiscal year, $13.5 billion. $13.5 billion. Do you know Ontario alone's deficit is $439 billion. If we didn't have that deficit or that debt, do you know how much better we could be doing? But no, we borrow, we spend more than we bring in. That creates interest issues, and that's why people are suffering. There's one more thing I want to play from Premier Ford. While I disagree with, I shouldn't even say I disagree. Generally speaking, I think the premier is on the right track in a lot of ways. He just comes off very out of touch, and I don't believe him when he says things like 55,000 new jobs got created. I don't believe him when he says there's 4 pages of multi-billion-dollar investments on the table ready to go. Get ready for a wealth of announcements. Okay, let's see how many announcements get done, and then let's see how many of those places actually open up and create jobs for people and pay taxes and help us contribute to paying down that incredible $439 billion debt. The premier talked about an issue that I think is one we should all care about. The sex offender registry. Now, why would we talk about the sex offender registry right now? Well, because the premier is again threatening to use the notwithstanding clause, and I'm okay with him using the notwithstanding clause in this case. This is an interesting exchange with reporters. Listen to the premier talking about why he wants to make more of the sex offender registry public knowledge.
On the sex offenders registry, your government's looking at maybe making more information public.
Yes.
What kind of information?
Well, it's absolutely critical. You have a sex offender and he's living next door down the street and you have a bunch of kids. You want to know about it. So we're going to make sure the sex offender registry is out there public. And sure, we're probably going to get shot down from the courts again. But I'll use every single tool to make sure we protect the victims over the sex offenders. It's a no-brainer. I'll use the notwithstanding clause in a heartbeat. If the courts, again, it's like the Supreme Court, a week ago, 2 weeks ago, said that sex offenders that push child pornography out should not get a mandatory 1-year sentence. Like, What is the Supreme Court thinking? Who are you in favor with? A bunch of diddlers that are out there pushing child porn and hanging out in neighborhoods and trying to track down young children? Or do you protect the victims? And unfortunately, the Supreme Court has chose to protect these nasty criminals, and just they make me sick. I'd throw these child pornography people, I'd throw them in jail, throw away the key, they can rot in there, because nothing's more important to protect our communities, protect them from people like these. I can't even put the word out there. They're a bunch of diddlers. I can't stand them. They make me sick. And they need to go to jail, and that's it. And I'll do everything I can to make sure communities around Ontario know if there's a sex offender living next door or living by a school, they shouldn't even be out. They should be in jail. Let them rot in there. I can't stand those guys. They make me sick. But Finance Minister, over to you.
Okay, I mean, hey, the Premier is absolutely right about that. I think we would all agree we don't want sex offenders living next to us. But how would you know if there is a sex offender living next to you? And how would that sex offender registry work? Is there certain levels of sex offender? There is many different levels of that crime, by the way, sex offender. Is it just people who viewed or shared intimate images of children? Because I think we can all agree on that. If you did that, people should know that you're living in their neighborhood. Or should they? The Supreme Court is going to say for sure that is a total abuse of the government process, and that is a violation of their privacy. And I would argue, and by the sounds of it, so would the Premier, the public has a right to be safe in their neighborhood. And if there is a convicted, registered sex offender, especially someone in the child porn area living in the neighborhood, we have a right to know. It also creates a safety issue, though. Hey, if you're out walking the dog and you see that person who you now know is on the sex offender registry walking a little too close to a school, are you going to call the cops and call it in? You going to go and beat the hell out of them? What are you going to do? It's going to lead to other issues. I mean, this is one that we need to talk about, but I certainly agree with the spirit of the Premier, and God, is he ever good at dropping those sound bites to make you forget about all the other things that he said. Diddlers, eh? I didn't know I was going to enjoy hearing Doug Ford say diddler that much, but he's into it. Good for you, Doug. Good. And we'll see where that goes, because no doubt, once that law passes, the court is going to strike it down. Doug says he has no problem using the notwithstanding clause to make sure that the law stands, but there's going to need to be some basic checks and balances here. There's going to need to be some common sense applied, and they're going to have to put in, unfortunately, some protection, probably, for these sex offenders. They got to live somewhere. Nobody wants them in their neighborhood, but they got to live somewhere. What kind of a life is that going to be if people know, hey, that person that lives across the street from you is a convicted sex offender? I mean, my first question would be, what did they do? Were they 16 and got it on with a 15-year-old? Because that could land you on the sex offender registry because you had sex with a statutory minor. What about child porn? That one, I think we can all agree we should know if there's somebody in the neighborhood who is convicted of distributing child porn. There's a lot of layers to it, and we need to know more. Before I wrap things up, I want to play a little bit of U.S. President Donald Trump. Yesterday, he talked more about the Epstein files. And today, the U.S. House of Representatives is going to vote to release the Epstein files. After that, it goes to the Senate. Probably going to pass in the Senate, especially now that Donald Trump has said, you know what? Go ahead. Vote in favor of it. If you send me a signed or an approved law, I'll sign it, and then it becomes the law of the land. He's saying he'll do it, and that will lead to the release of more of the Epstein files. All of them, actually. Here's President Trump talking about it yesterday.
Here's what I want. We have nothing to do with Epstein. The Democrats do. All of his friends were Democrats. You look at this Reid Hoffman, you look at Larry Summers, Bill Clinton, they went to his island all the time, and many others. They're all Democrats. All I want for people to recognize the great job that I've done on pricing, on affordability, because we brought prices way down, but they're going way lower, on energy, on ending 8 wars and another one coming pretty soon, I believe. We've done a great job. And I hate to see that deflect from the great job we've done. So I'm all for it. You know, we've already given 50,000 pages. You do know that. Unfortunately, like with the Kennedy situation, with the Martin Luther King situation, not to put Jeffrey Epstein in the same category, but no matter what we give, it's never enough. You know, with Kennedy, we gave everything and it wasn't enough. With Martin Luther King, we gave everything and it's never enough. We've already given, I believe the number is 50,000 pages. 50,000 pages. And it's just a Russia hoax as it pertains to the Republicans. Now, I believe that many of the people some of the people that we mentioned are being looked at very seriously for their relationship to Jeffrey Epstein. But they were with him all the time. I wasn't at all. And we'll see what happens. What I just don't want Epstein to do is detract from the great success of the Republican Party, including the fact that the Democrats are totally blamed for the shutdown. You know, they cost our country hundreds of billions of dollars with that, at a lot of inconvenience. So I'm for any. I don't. They can do whatever they want. We'll give them everything. Sure, I would. Let the Senate look at it. Let anybody look at it. But don't talk about it too much, because honestly, I don't want to take it away from us. It's really a Democrat problem. The Democrats were Epstein's friends, all of them. And it's a hoax. The whole thing is a hoax. And I don't want to take it away from really the greatness of what the Republican Party has accomplished over the last period of time.
Do you feel any closer to being informed? President Trump says he's got no problem releasing the files, but he doesn't want to do it because then people are only going to fixate on the Epstein files and not talk about the great job that he's doing. Well, I certainly understand his need to feed the ego, and hey, that's his prerogative. He no doubt wants some praise for what he's working on. Fine, no problem. But we still need these names. He says it's all Democrats in there. I mean, we'll find out soon enough if it's all Democrats. I don't know that it is. Is it possible that he's not in it? And the reason he's been trying to protect it is because there is some very prominent international leaders that are in it. And this is going to cause a pretty serious incident, maybe even global instability. That's just one of the rumors I heard. I don't know if it's true or not, but either way, we'll find out soon. Because the House of Representatives is going to vote to release those files. Then the Senate is likely going to vote to release those files. And after those files are out, the president will sign that. We'll find out more about who did what to children and unconsenting people, minors. I don't know how any other way to say it. It's the kids I'm worried about. If there were adults there and consenting adults that did things, I don't care. That's none of my business. I only care about people who use their money, their wealth, their fame, and their position of power to abuse children. Another one on this particular topic, U.S. Senate Leader Chuck Schumer asked a very interesting question yesterday at a news conference. This is good, and this is a question I think we should be asking as well.
Senator, on that note, just I guess a question that's out there, why wouldn't they have been released the last 4 years when President Biden was in office?
Well, that's the question every American is asking. Or not every American, but so many Americans are asking. What the hell is he hiding?
I don't know that Chuck Schumer necessarily understood the question. The question was, Joe Biden had the White House for 4 years. Chuck Schumer was leading in the Senate at that time. Why didn't they release the Epstein files if they're that concerned about it now? That's a good question. Why didn't he do that? I'm really not sure. Before I go, the lighter side of Donald Trump. I know there's a lot of folks who don't like him, and I understand totally. I'm so put off by this Epstein obstruction thing that I just don't have many nice things to say about the president right now. But every now and again, you get a humanizing moment from our leaders. And when that happens, I feel like it's worth playing. Yesterday, President Trump was speaking to a major convention of McDonald's franchisees. They have a convention every year. They talk about all the different things that are going to be coming out on the menu, feedback from various parts of the country, best practices, that sort of thing. So the president was invited to speak. And you may know that President Trump is a huge fan of McDonald's. Listen to some of this.
I'm thrilled to be here with the men and the women who are really the heart and soul of one of the greatest, most admired, and most successful companies in the history of the world, frankly. the one and only McDonald's. I've gone there a couple of times. And I'm honored to stand before you as the very first former McDonald's fry cook ever to become president of the United States. And I actually was there for about 30 minutes, and that was 30 minutes longer than Kamala was there.
Okay, nice lighthearted moment there from the president.
While other politicians fly around on campaign planes stocked with expensive catering, on Trump Force One, prior to ascending to Air Force One, which is quite a nice plane also, we served only McDonald's almost every time. On occasion, we couldn't find one, which is pretty hard to believe. We'd go another route, but we really did. You fed us very well, and I even got Bobby Kennedy to eat a Big Mac. And he told me he loved it. He didn't want that publicized. He told me he loved it. I thought it was great.
Bobby Kennedy eating a Big Mac. Oh, my God. What a travesty. Let's do one more.
Doing honest, beautiful, hard work and happy families sitting down to a really great meal. Because no matter who you are, everyone loves something at McDonald's. There's always something to have. I like the fish. I like it. You could do a little bit more tartar sauce, please. Seriously. I hate when I said, do you have any tartar sauce? Do you understand that? Yes, I had. He understands that.
That's kind of cool. You could tell he was a little starstruck. He's a huge fan of McDonald's, and getting to talk to that many people that own a McDonald's, whoo, bucket list thing for Trump. Friends, I got to go. I know I went long today, but I wanted to share with you the details of that phone call I got last night, letting you know what the conservative strategy is. The strategy is wait for the late winter or spring, see the lay of the land then, and then take a shot at winning a majority, as opposed to just small potatoes that could have happened if they defeated the budget yesterday. Is it politically opportunistic? Yeah. Is every other party doing it? Yeah, they are. So we are where we are. Tomorrow, NASA is doing a briefing for the world on 3I Atlas, that thing that is tentatively labeled a comet, but doesn't have comet-like characteristics. Tomorrow, there's a news conference, and I'm going to tell you what I know about that tomorrow, right here on Scott Fox After 9. And then on Thursday, I'll have complete coverage of that news conference right here in the pod. Today, I leave you with the sounds of Pat James and The Whole Truth. Hey now, see you tomorrow.